තව දුරටත් ඔබ වෙනුවෙන් ඉදිරියට.
Good afternoon. Today is the 20th of May 2022. Welcome to Lunchtime News here on TV1. For the News First team, I'm Sanita Senanayaka. News First, where the people come first. Let's first take a look at the headlines.
Harin and Manusha from Samagi Jana Balawegaya appointed as cabinet ministers. Party to take disciplinary actions, says Lakshman Kiriyalla. Lanka IOC decides to issue fuel only to vehicles. Signs of aid from the G7 countries to Sri Lanka. IMF closely monitoring political and economical situation in Sri Lanka.
Now to those stories in detail. Sri Lanka appointed 9 new cabinet ministers earlier today. Previously, 4 ministers had sworn in. News First's Azra Hassan joins us now.
9 new cabinet ministers have been appointed. Nimal Siripala de Silva has been appointed as the minister in charge of ports, naval and civil aviation. Susi Prema Jayantha as the minister in charge of education. Kehele Rambukala as the minister in charge of health. Vijay Dasa Rajapaksa as the minister in charge of justice, prisons and constitutional reforms. Haring Fernando as minister in charge of tourism and land. Ramesh Patrina as the minister in charge of plantation industries, and Nalin Manushananayakara as the minister in charge of labour and foreign employment. Nalin Ruanjuva Fernando has been appointed as minister in charge of trade, commerce and food security. And finally, Tiranalas has been appointed as the minister in charge of public security.
Thank you, Azra, for that report. Now, meanwhile, speaking in Parliament, MP Lakshman Kiriyalla said that disciplinary action will be taken against the members of the Samagi Jana Balawegaya who accepted ministerial portfolios.
Parliamentarians of the Samagi Jana Balawegaya and the Sri Lanka Freedom Party, including the MPs who became independent, must realise that they must work together to uplift the country. It is a very positive move to include parliamentarians from those parties in the cabinet. It is not the policy of the SJB, including the Samagi Jana Alliance, to join hands with the government. We decided to provide positive assistance to the government while staying in the opposition. Our party leader has promised to provide assistance, provide medicine needed by the hospitals through a letter. With the permission of our party leader, we will take disciplinary actions against those who resigned.
Speaking to Sky News, Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe has said the last administration is to be blamed for the crisis in Sri Lanka.
And if the current administration is to blame, then have we seen enough punishment for them yet? Of course, the president is still in power. His brother, the prime minister, may have stepped down, but their family has essentially run the country for 2 decades. Should the president resign?
Well, that's a controversy because the people at Galface, all the youths, have the view that president should resign. That's a view also held outside and by some of the political parties. On the other hand, the Bar Association of the view that the executive presidency should be abolished. They do not mention anything about the president resigning. So there are 2 different views. I have suggested that once we pass the 21st Amendment, which should restore the original 19th Amendment, strengthening Parliament, strengthening the powers of the Prime Minister, then all party leaders and the President should have a discussion and come to some arrangement on the future course.
At the moment, would you say it's safe for tourists to come and visit Sri Lanka?
Well, those who want to have an exciting time could come here, and maybe they could even take part in the demonstrations. They could hold placards which says for the President of Sri Lanka to go home, or you could hold a placard asking the Prime Minister of your country to go home. All that is option that's available.
Fitch Ratings has downgraded Sri Lanka's long-term foreign currency issuer default rating to restricted default from C. Fitch typically does not assign modifiers or sovereigns with a rating of CCC or below. A restricted default is a grade higher than a default in Fitch's definition and means that a country has an uncured payment default but has not entered into bankruptcy filings, liquidation or other formal winding up procedures. Moving on, an International Monetary Fund virtual mission to Sri Lanka is expected to conclude technical talks on a potential IMF loan program on the 24th of May.
I wanted to ask about Sri Lanka. Obviously, there's since we last had a briefing, there's the unrest is there's at least people have been killed. There's been orders to shoot on sight. So I'm wondering, in that context, I'd like a sort of an update on where things stand with the IMF. Also, Egypt is saying that the Mabuli has said that they expect to have a new loan in the next few months, and I'm wondering if that's your understanding as well, and what you could say about that. And by contrast, Ghana has said that they intend to go forward without IMF assistance, and if you have any comment on that. So those are the three. Thanks a lot.
Let me just try and take your three questions fairly quickly. Lots of interest in Sri Lanka, Matthew, to which I can say we are concerned, of course, about the current economic crisis in Sri Lanka, and especially the hardships being endured by the people of Sri Lanka, and especially many of those people poor and vulnerable. So we are clearly monitoring the political and economic developments very closely. Matthew, an IMF team has been engaging in technical discussions on the authorities' request for an IMF-supported program, so they have asked for the program, as I think you know. We talked about this the last time I was here. And there's currently a virtual IMF staff mission engaged in those technical talks with the Sri Lankan authorities, and we expect that to continue, that mission to continue through May 24. So we remain committed to help Sri Lanka in line with the IMF's policies, and will engage with stakeholders in support of a timely resolution of the crisis that is being faced there. On Egypt, Matthew, what I can say is
G7 finance chiefs say the group of 7 economic powers will support efforts to provide debt relief for Sri Lanka.
In a statement, the G7 countries said they were committed to finding long-term solutions for Sri Lanka and urged it to negotiate constructively with the International Monetary Fund on a potential loan program. They said, quote, "The G7 stands ready to support the Paris Club's efforts in line with its principles to address the need for a debt treatment for Sri Lanka," end quote. The statement also called on other big creditor nations not in the Paris Club to coordinate with the groups and urged them to provide debt relief on comparable terms. G7 finance chiefs also signalled out China, which has become a major creditor in low-income countries, to actively contribute to debt relief for such countries. G7 is an organization of the world's 7 largest so-called advanced economies, which dominate global trade and the international financial system. They are Canada, France, Germany, Italy, Japan, the UK and the United States.
Now, meanwhile, people across the island continue to face the brunt of the shortage in gas.
Chairman of Litrogas engineer Vijita Herat said 50,000 domestic gas cylinders have been released to the market today. He further stated measures were taken to distribute 35,000 gas cylinders to the market yesterday. 2 tankers are to arrive in the country in the near future. Meanwhile, people of Kahava Ambalanguda had not received sufficient amount of gas cylinders. Frustrated area residents blocked the road to prevent the truck transporting gas from leaving the area. A group of people protested opposite the Ambalangoda gas distribution centre, demanding gas. The police has intervened to control the situation. Residents of Walathamulla, who had not received gas for about a month, engaged in a protest blocking the Sarna road. The issuance of gas in Badula commenced this morning. Long queues were seen in the town since yesterday morning. Gas has not been distributed in Dehiwala in several days.
Meanwhile, Lanka IOC has decided to issue fuel only to vehicles with immediate effect. Issuing a release, it noted accordingly fuel will not be issued to cans and bottles.
Fuel crisis in the country has not seen a solution yet. Long queues were seen in Colombo and surrounding areas. Meanwhile, Sri Lanka Petroleum Private Tankers Owners Association says reducing the queues at the filling stations has become a tedious task as certain people are given preferential treatment in loading fuel to the tankers.
ඊයේ රාත්‍රියේ මේ පෙට්‍රල් නෞකාව ගොඩ බෑවා. ඒකේ තියෙනවා 92 ඔක්ටේන්
The petrol shipment was unloaded last night. It contained 19,000 metric tons of 92 octane petrol and 9,000 metric tons of 95 octane petrol. We started the distribution process last night. The issue is that the cost of the fuel for us is reduced from our monthly bill. However, we had to wait in queues for about 5 hours. The reason is that fuel is being issued to outside vehicles and organizations. This will delay distribution of fuel to the filling stations. We requested them to provide a solution to this.
අඩාල වෙනවා. ඉතින් ඒකට මොකක් හරි පිළියමක් යොදන්න කියලා අපි මේනකොට දිල්ලීමක් කරලා තියෙනවා.
The matter regarding the issuance of fuel to the vehicles of parliamentarians was discussed in Parliament today.
Yesterday, a MP informed in Parliament that fuel was issued for MPs at a lower price at the filling station of the Naharanpita police. The statement has caused a huge backlash among the public. What I told was that we have never purchased fuel for that price and there's no requirement. If fuel is not been issued for 121 rupees, then correct it in the machine. Until yesterday, the MPs never had this type of an issue when pumping fuel. However, a letter was circulated under your name and it was sent to the media as well. The main issue is that a special method was being introduced to the MPs. That is what made the people angry. So there's no point in accusing me when the method was wrong. After the incident on the 9th, especially the female MPs requested us to establish a method for them to obtain fuel. That is when we sent it to the Energy Minister. The female MPs cannot stay in queues at this time. There are protests taking place everywhere. We initiated this to address that issue. I urge you to not to make this a huge issue.
Meanwhile, Energy Minister Kanchana Wijesekara said that the police fuel stations' temporary permit to sell fuel for other vehicles has been revoked. In a tweet, the minister said that the licenses of 4 fuel stations have been suspended by the CPC last night for holding stocks without distributing and dispensing to cans and barrels, ignoring the guidelines and regulations. Moving on, the peaceful protest site in Galface, dubbed Gotago Gama, entered day 42 today. We are now joined by Newsfirst's Nisal Suryarachi.
A new Prime Minister has been appointed, but the people in Sri Lanka continue to gather here at the Galface as well as the President's office here at Gotago Gama for 42 consecutive days, demanding for a peaceful, corruption-free, better Sri Lanka.
Protesters at Galface call for a system change which excludes the culture of political deals. Their main demand is the resignation of the president.
Another phase of the Divisavya program to distribute dry rations among families in need was held in the Polonnaru district today. The Divisavya program, sponsored by LOLC Holdings, aims at supporting low-income families in many parts of Sri Lanka.
Today marks the 10th day of the Divisavya program aimed at supporting the low-income families. Two separate teams will distribute essential goods to people living in 8 Grama Niladhari divisions in the Polonnaru district today. Essential food items were distributed among residents in Mahava and Pulpitigama in Kurunagala.
Taking a look back at a news item that came in from the ongoing parliamentary sessions, majority of the MPs requested to close down the canteen or the cafeteria at the parliament at a time the country is facing a food crisis.
A letter was received with the signatures of 53 SLPP MPs citing that they will not eat from the parliament cafeteria. I will take steps to halt providing food from the cafeteria to those MPs. Moreover, I will discuss this matter in the next party leaders meeting and decide whether or not this rule will apply to all the parliamentarians. We requested it to be closed down. People in the country are suffering without food. Give us a food packet. There are rumors circulating stating that we have asked for a hotel.
අපි ලියුම බාර දුන්නේ මේ අපි 53 දෙනා විතරක් භෝජනාගාරයට නෑ නෙමෙයි අපි ඉල්ලුවේ මේ භෝජනාගාරේ වහලා දාලා සාධාරණ මිලකට අපිට කෑම පාර්සලයක් ගෙනත් දෙන්න කියලා. අවශ්‍ය മന്ത്രിවරයෙකුට. ඒ සම්බන්ධයෙන් පක්ෂ නායකයන් ඔබතුමාට එක්සතුන්ත වෙන ඒ සම්බන්ධව දාරු කතානායකතුමනේ පාර්ලිමේන්තුව රැස්තුණත් නැතත්.
Speaker, more than 1,000 people are staffed at the parliament, whether the parliament convenes or not. They come here every day. They are fed every day. So it is up to you to reveal the parliamentarians' expenses on days parliament is convened as well as on days parliament is not convened. Then we can reveal the truth. Some people destroy the dignity of everyone, trying to be the good ones here.
And that brings us to an end of this edition of Lunchtime News here on TV1. For the News First team, I've been Sanita Senanayaka. News First, where the people come first. Take care and stay safe.
දශකයක ගමනක් ඔබත් එක්ක ඔබට සවන් දෙමින් ගමීතුක හදවතින්ම දකිමින් දැනෙන යාදෙන විසුදුම් දෙමින් අකණ්ඩ ජනපෙරටු ගමන ගම්නැත්තේ දර්ශනයයි සද්භාවයක් සත්‍ය කරුණු පදනම් කොටගෙන ගම්නැත්ත පෙරට යන්නේ ජනතාව සමගින් ජනතාව උදෙසා ගම්නැත්ත රට නගන ජන පවුර